My name is Alice McKinney, and I'm a SNAP Program Analyst here at the Food and Nutrition Service. My colleague, Sarah Goldberg, also a Program Analyst, is unable to join us today. During this call, we're going to discuss basic information and application requirements for the Process and Technology Improvement Grant, which I will refer to in this webinar by the acronym PTIG. But before we begin, I wanted to let everyone know that this webinar is being recorded and that this PowerPoint presentation, as well as the audio from the webinar, will be posted under the Grant Opportunities at FNCS section of the FNS Public website. All phone lines have been muted, and participants are in a listen-only mode for this webinar. We welcome you to use the chat feature in WebEx to ask your questions throughout the webinar, and we will respond to you as soon as we are able to at the end. Lastly, we've included a lot of information in this webinar, but all of this information is also in the RFA, and I will provide the slides in an email after the webinar. Both the recording and the slide deck will be available on the FNS website. So let's get started. During today's webinar, we will discuss basic information about the purpose of this grant and who can apply for funding, funding priorities for this year's grant competition, review criteria that will be used by evaluators to assess the application, application submission procedures, and then we will answer your questions at the end of the webinar. So the purpose of this grant competition is to develop and implement projects that focus on improving the quality and efficiency of SNAP operations and processes. The following are entities that are eligible for PTIG funding: state agencies that administer SNAP, that is, the 50 states, along with DC, Guam, and the Virgin Islands; state or local governments; agencies that provide health or welfare services; public health or educational entities; and private nonprofit entities, which includes community-based or faith-based organizations, food banks, or other emergency feeding organizations. As you can see, there is a broad swath of entities that may be able to apply for a PTIG. Now we will provide you with some more detailed information regarding the awards themselves. PTIGs are subject to the availability of funds. Up to $5 million will be available for this year's grant competition. Grants are awarded through a competitive process. In other words, submitting a proposal does not guarantee funding. There is no cost sharing or cost matching required. The funding amount per award is dependent on the number of awards granted. FNS anticipates that we will award between 6 and 11 grants for fiscal year 18. The anticipated funding level per award ranges anywhere from $20,000 to $2 million. In the past, we have awarded a grantee less funds than requested in their proposal. Sometimes this occurs when a grantee requests funds for something that wasn't allowable, or the goals of the project could be achieved with less funds. And also, the project period is for 3 years. And I do also want to mention, if the activities funded under this grant are part of a larger eligibility system project with the total projected costs exceeding $6 million, an advanced planning document, or APD, must be submitted and approved prior to the expenditure of these grant funds. Guidance on the APD process can be found on the FNS website. So we would like to bring your attention to some funding restrictions that exist for all grantees. Pre-award costs will not be awarded. That is, a cost that was incurred prior to the grant project period beginning. Also, funds are intended for new projects only. Funds cannot be used for ongoing costs of existing projects. Projects that are predicated on waiving SNAP regulations are not allowable. Funds can only be used for SNAP's share of the project costs. And finally, the project cannot devote more than 25% of the requested grant funds to outreach activities, such as informational materials, peer application assistance, screening or pre-qualifying applicants, or activities whose purpose is to attract or recruit SNAP applicants. This is in alignment with overall SNAP outreach guidance. So just some key dates to keep in mind. Completed grant proposals, along with all necessary forms, must be uploaded onto grants.gov by Monday, June 25th at 11:59 p.m. Eastern. FNS will announce the recipients of this year's grants no later than September 30th, 2018, and the project period of the award is 3 years, beginning September 30th, 2018, going through September 30th, 2021. So now we will discuss this year's PTIG funding priorities. The funding priorities for this grant competition change each year based on FNS agency priorities and SNAP program needs. This year, projects should prioritize improving customer service, increasing efficiencies in case management, and/or systems improvements. In designing projects to address these priority areas, applicants should consider using innovative ideas to solve both common and unique problems. Also, proposals must identify how one or more SNAP certification processes will improve as a result of this project. For example, proposals should explain how the project will improve application intake, application screening, the interview, notices, verifications, client reporting, client complaints, recertification, or the fair hearing process. These are all listed in the RFA. Projects that target traditionally underserved populations, such as the elderly, disabled, rural communities, and veterans, are especially encouraged. So the first priority area is improving customer service. This priority area focuses on projects that improve the client's experience. Such projects provide straightforward information about case status in easy-to-access, customer-friendly ways. Specific projects could include increasing or improving call center functionality, accepting telephonic signatures, creating mobile apps, clarifying certification materials. The next priority is increasing efficiencies in case management. Proposals that target this priority will make it easier for caseworkers to process cases, assist clients, increase program integrity, and reduce churn. Such projects could include helping clients remember and meet deadlines, proposing a business process re-engineering effort, reducing costs or administrative burden, or improving outcomes for SNAP households. And the third priority is system improvements. These projects promote innovative technological enhancements to state eligibility systems, resulting in more accurate and efficient case management. One methodology that works well with this priority area is data analytics. Data can be used to detect patterns of client access and certification processing issues in order to improve case management. Gathering and analyzing data can help identify improper use or timing of notices. It can help pinpoint eligibility workers in need of training, or it can also assist with identifying client subgroups with high rates of churn. Once a pattern has been detected, the PTIG project could be a systems change that results in improved efficiency and provides clients and eligible applicants with their benefits in a timely manner. So just to recap, all applications must support efforts by state agencies and community-based and faith-based partners to develop and implement projects that focus on improving the quality and efficiency of SNAP operations and processes. Grant proposals must be submitted to grants.gov by Monday, June 25th by 11:59 p.m. Eastern. Also, the RFA does include a detailed checklist that will help applicants ensure their proposals meet all necessary requirements. This checklist is located on page Roman numeral 3 of the RFA, so right at the top. Please take the time to review and read the RFA in full. So now we will go over the review criteria that proposals will be judged on. A review panel will be convened to evaluate proposals successfully submitted to grants.gov by the deadline. Incomplete or late proposals will not be considered. The review criteria discussed in this webinar, and as listed on this slide, is based on the application content that is outlined in the RFA. For more information, please see the RFA posted on grants.gov. The review panel will evaluate each grant application based on how well it addresses each of the following evaluation criteria. So as we go through the review criteria over the next few slides, we also want to apply this criteria to a sample project to help you better understand what we will be looking for as we analyze your proposals. Do not copy this project verbatim for your state. However, innovative, well-researched projects of this type are welcome to enter the grant competition. The example project we will use for discussion purposes is creating a worker dashboard to better monitor applications. So the first part of the review criteria that I'm going to talk about is the project design section. This section is the most heavily weighted section of the evaluation criteria. This section essentially contains an analysis of the problem and how the project you're proposing will help solve the problem. The proposal should include and clearly describe the problem to be solved and provide evidence that the proposed approach is well suited to solve the identified issue. The RFA offers specific criteria for the project design section. So using our sample project, a bad example of a project design would be a proposal that identifies what will be created, such as this worker dashboard, but does not explain why it is needed. And a good example of project design for this example would be laying out how that dashboard will improve application processing timeliness for the state, including measurable and attainable goals in a problem solution format. Also, a quick note on letters that may be required for you to submit with your proposal. If a state agency submits an application in partnership with other organizations, the state must provide a letter of commitment from the proposed partner. State agencies submitting an application on their own do not need a letter of commitment. These letters may be addressed to the FNS Grants Officer, Kimberly Shields. Also, FNS welcomes grant proposals from entities other than the state agency. Such applicants must demonstrate that the state agency strongly endorses and/or is involved in the proposed project through a letter of endorsement. It must also describe how the project will support the state's current or planned technology improvement efforts and priorities. These letters may also be addressed to the FNS Grants Officer, Kimberly Shields. So the next review criteria that we will discuss is organizational experience, staff capability, and management. The narrative provided in your proposal should provide enough detail for reviewers to easily understand who is managing this project and the time commitment it will involve. Proposals should also include a detailed internal and, if applicable, external communications plan. So using our discussion example of the worker dashboard, a bad example for this criteria is simply listing the employees that will work on this project without specific roles for each of them, whereas a good example fitting this criteria is clearly identifying all parties that will be involved with a short project job description for each and a percentage of their time that they will devote to the project. The next review criteria we will look at is evaluation. In addition to prioritizing cost effectiveness and demonstrating that the anticipated results are commensurate with the cost of the project, FNS is looking for proposals that include comprehensive evaluation plans. Evaluation plans should address who will measure the project goals, what criteria will be evaluated, and at what intervals during the grant period will evaluation occur. So in the bad example on this slide, as you can see, this is not a very rigorous example. An evaluation plan that is only one paragraph that just says that caseworkers will be surveyed at the end would not be sufficient. However, a good example of an evaluation plan is one that is detailed, including both pre- and post-dashboard launch surveys from caseworkers for this example, measured targets for triaging applications for expedites, and those that have been waiting the longest, and a comparison of pre- and post-timeliness rates, including target goals if they are appropriate. So you can see there's definitely a clear example there. The second most heavily weighted item we will be scoring your proposals on is your budget appropriateness and economic efficiency. Proposal submissions which omit the required budget forms, budget narratives, and/or line item descriptions will not receive the full point value for this criterion. Therefore, applicants should recognize that a well-written budget narrative, which justifies the proposed project expenditures, assists reviewers during the process. The RFA also outlines additional requirements if proposals include indirect costs, projects that include programs other than SNAP, larger budgets, and nonprofit applicants or partners. Information about these items, should the proposal include them, should be within your budget section as well. Applicants that are required to issue bids should provide a narrative explaining the requirements and provide a reasonable estimate of contractual and consultant costs. The slide lists what specific information about consultant or contract workers should be included in your proposal. And again, we'll be emailing out these slides after this event, and they'll also be available on the FNS website in the coming days. So a bad example of a budget would be a narrative that is non-descriptive, who has items from the budget checklist in the RFA, not in their line item budget. Whereas a good example of a budget would be a narrative that addresses all substantial or notable portions of the line item budget, including reasoning for all consultants or employees that will be involved in the project, any equipment or supply purchases that might be required of your project, and an explanation of how those costs were estimated. We have included this budget checklist that I've mentioned in the RFA to help applicants demonstrate to the review panel that they've put effort into determining what they will need to spend and for what purpose. It seems simple, but sometimes budgets lack very simple items that are mentioned elsewhere in the proposal, which can hurt your score for your proposal. So please be sure to take the time and make sure that all components of your proposal are in alignment. The last review criteria is presentation. Presentation also seems easy, and it is, as long as you take the time to double check it before you submit. The project description should be no more than 25 pages. This does not include the cover sheet, table of contents, required forms, or other appendices. All pages, excluding the form pages, must be numbered. So now we will provide you with information on how to submit your application. Standard forms in the 424 family are available on grants.gov under the tab entitled Forms. Also, please note if your organization is not a state agency, you are also required to submit an AD 3030 with your application package. You also are required to fill out the Grant Program Accounting System and Financial Capability Questionnaire. This questionnaire can be found on pages 27 through 29 of the RFA and is required for all applicants. Also, please be aware, in order to submit an application via grants.gov, applicants must have a Data Universal Numbering System, or DUNS number, and be registered in the new Systems for Award Management, or SAM, and on grants.gov. So we want to take a minute to focus here because we know there's a lot of information on this slide and it can be confusing. So obtaining your DUNS number may take several days, so be sure to plan for that. And then to register in SAM, you will need your DUNS number. You'll also need a tax ID number and your taxpayer name. And we do also just want to raise for everybody, SAM now has a new requirement for new SAM registrants and those who are updating or renewing their expired registrations in SAM. In order to deter and prevent fraudulent activity, you're now required to mail in a notarized letter identifying that you are the authorized entity administrator for the entity associated with that DUNS number. This letter must be received by SAM before the registration will be activated in the system. We anticipate that this might cause a delay in the application process, so please do this early. For more information, visit www.sam.gov, and their new requirement is listed right at the top of their homepage. Also, please note that the regular requirement of verification in SAM taking at least 48 hours still exists. So this is all a reminder to get started early on these processes. And also, please note that applicants must have a valid SAM registration no later than 3 days prior to the application due date. And lastly, the registration process for grants.gov generally takes between 3 to 5 business days. So we've said it before and we'll say it again, registering with these systems can feel like a complicated process, so please do start them now. You don't need to have your proposal in a final form in order to start your registration in SAM or to obtain your DUNS number. And just a quick FYI, all applicants must follow grants.gov guidance on file naming conventions. To avoid submission issues, please follow the guidance provided in the grants.gov frequently asked questions page. And we do have a number of those informational, that information is on this slide here as well. We also want to provide you with some quick reference links. This slide includes information that might be helpful, including the link to the PTIG page on the FNS website, contact information for the grants officer, as well as a reminder of that deadline of June 25th to get everything uploaded to grants.gov. So before we take questions, I want to show you how to navigate to the PTIG's website on the FNS website. Starting from the FNS homepage, which is fns.usda.gov, select the Grants tab at the top of the page, which is highlighted here. Clicking on that Grants tab will take you to the list of open grants at FNS. Select the FY2018 SNAP Process and Technology Improvement Grants link that was posted on April 23rd. And then this will take you to the PTIG landing page, which is seen on this slide. The PTIG landing page includes links to apply for the grant, all the required forms. It will include this webinar recording within the next couple of days, as well as information about past PTIG recipients. So if you have any questions, please be sure to send them in now using the chat feature in WebEx. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have, and we're also joined right now by Kimberly Shields, our grants officer for the PTIGs, who is in the room with me and can answer any questions that you might have as well. So I'll give everyone a minute just to get those questions going. So we have our first question, and somebody asked, am I the point of contact for this grant? So your main point of contact is actually Kimberly Shields. She is the grants officer. Sarah and I are just the program officers, so we work directly in SNAP every day, and Kimberly runs grants. I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
This is Kimberly speaking. If it's something that's program specific, I will relay the message over to Alice and Sarah for review, and then they generally give me a response, and then I'm able to provide the response back to you. So, you know, if it's really project specific, I'll be able to get an answer for you in that regard.
Great. So we have another question here. If you're currently funded under a previous USDA SNAP technology grant, are you eligible to apply for a different project? We've been getting this question a lot lately, and you are in fact able to apply if you are currently receiving a PTIG grant. Obviously, you can't apply for the exact same project you're already receiving funding for, but there's nothing to stop you from applying for a different project.
Also, you can't use, if you are awarded for a future year, you can't mix the money. So you can't use some money from your new grant to help fund your old grant or vice versa. So I just wanted you guys, you know, you all to know that you can't mix the money. The money is specific for the project that you were awarded the money for.
Great. Just another easy question. Will you be emailing copies of the slides out for this WebEx? And I will, in fact, be emailing these slides out later this afternoon to everyone that attended as well as those who missed. Another great question, does it have to be an original project, or could it be something that another district is doing and we would like to copy? So that is a question that we do want to analyze a little bit closer. Obviously, you know, we know some things are being iterated across many different locations. We know people have applied for similar grants in the past for like mobile applications or stuff related to systems improvements, but we're going to have to get back to you on that one. You can also feel free to email us. Our emails are up on the screen here, and we can address any specific questions that you guys might have. So if a county agency wishes to apply for a grant, would they apply the same way as a state agency? So that would be considered a local government, and you can apply for the PTIG yourself with the county as the lead on the grant, but you will need to obtain a letter of, I always get mixed up between the letters of endorsement and commitment, but you will need to work with your state to make sure that it does align with their priorities for that year, and that you would need to obtain a letter of endorsement from your state agency in order to make that application. We'll stand by to see if there's any more questions. I think I've addressed everything that is in the Q&A, so we'll just give everyone one more minute. So just one more question in here. Somebody asks, how long would it take to know if you're approved for the grant once all information has been turned in? So like I said, the deadline for applications is June 25th. At that time, we will convene our review panel, and we will make our announcements of who is receiving the grant for this year by the end of September. So another question here, is there a process for the letter of endorsement on your website? I don't believe that we have specific guidance on that. I don't know if Kimberly, you're able to address that generally for all of the grants.
There's not a process that I know of. I mean, generally they just send them to me after each state may have a different process, but
yeah,
I've seen different variations of an endorsement letter, so I'm not exactly sure if all states follow the same process.
Yeah, getting that letter obtained would definitely be, you know, you should work with your state agency and the people that you work with in there to make sure that you're all on the same page. And it's really just for us to know that you've convened with them, that you guys are all in agreement that this is a grant that they will be able to support, not financially, but that they will be able to support in terms of, you know, aligning it with their priorities. So that just, usually it just comes as a letter that gets submitted along with your application as an attachment.
And it's on official letterhead, and it has official signature of whomever is endorsing the project.
So somebody just asked a question of clarification about that letter of endorsement. They want to know, if you are a state agency, do you not need a letter of endorsement? So there are two types of letters. There's the letter of endorsement, and then there's the letter of commitment. Now, if you're the state agency that is applying alone, you don't need either of those two letters. However, if you are the state agency and you are applying in partnership with another community organization, if you are leading the grant and you're partnering with another organization, you will need a letter of commitment, and that letter of commitment will indicate from that community-based organization or entity that they commit to working with you on this grant. So it goes both ways. And I'll be emailing out these slides. It shows more information about those two types of letters. There's also a very good description of both the letters of commitment and the letters of endorsement in the RFA. We'll just give it one more minute. If you have any additional questions, please be sure to type them in the chat box in the WebEx. And again, just while you're thinking of any final questions, just a reminder, if something comes up later and you don't remember, you can reach out to us and we will get you an answer. Okay, well, if that's all the questions for today, thank you everybody so much for joining us. Please do feel free to reach back if you have any clarification questions, and have a great afternoon.